I let my child plan a huge celebration with friends and colleagues, then hijacked it at the last minute to celebrate my stepdaughter. Getting a part-time job she'd only had for 3 weeks. Now everyone says I publicly humiliated my child. I didn't think I was doing anything wrong when I did it. I genuinely believed I was being fair, inclusive, and supportive. That's why I'm struggling so hard with everyone acting like I committed some unforgivable crime, instead of what I saw as a well-intentioned moment that got blown out of proportion. For context, I'm 52, remarried, and I have one biological daughter, Olivia, 26, from my first marriage to Neil. My current husband, Tom, has a daughter, Brianna, 19, from his previous relationship. I didn't come into Brianna's life until she was already a teenager, and that's important here. Olivia was already an adult by the time I remarried, living on her own, building her career, and very much independent. Brianna, on the other hand, is still figuring things out. She's shy, not particularly confident, and has always needed more encouragement than Olivia ever did. I've always been honest about the fact that my two girls are very different. Olivia has never needed much from me. She was the kind of kid who did her homework without reminders, worked part-time through college, and handled her own problems. Brianna struggles more. She second-guesses herself, gets overwhelmed easily, and tends to shut down when she doesn't feel supported. Because of that, yes, more attention naturally goes toward Brianna. I don't see that as favoritism. I see it as responding to different needs. You don't give the same support to a child who's drowning as you do to one who's already swimming laps. Olivia recently hit a major career milestone. I won't go into all the details because it's not the point, but it was a significant promotion tied to a big project she led at work. It's the kind of thing that comes with recognition in her industry, and she was very proud of herself. She decided to plan a celebration on her own. She booked a venue, organized catering, invited her co-workers, mentors, friends, and some family. I was invited, of course, but I wasn't involved in planning. She made it very clear this was her thing, which I respected, even if I felt a bit pushed to the sidelines. I'll be honest, part of me felt irritated. Olivia didn't ask for my input, didn't ask for help, didn't even ask for advice. She handled everything herself, which is typical for her, but it also made me feel unnecessary. The event felt less like a family celebration and more like a professional networking event that happened to include family as an afterthought. Meanwhile, Brianna was quietly working up the courage to tell us she'd landed her first part-time job at a local cafe. She was so proud of herself, and I could see how much it meant to her. She'd only been there a few weeks, but for someone like Brianna, that was a big step. That's where the idea formed. I didn't wake up that morning thinking, I'm going to steal Olivia's spotlight. I thought, this is a room full of people who care about our family. Why not acknowledge both girls? Olivia already had an entire evening dedicated to her success. Brianna barely had anyone noticing hers. I genuinely thought it would be a kind gesture to include her, to show her that her efforts mattered too. I didn't think Olivia would mind. She's always been secure, confident, and frankly already celebrated enough in my eyes. I didn't ask Olivia beforehand. Looking back, I can see people latching onto that as the biggest issue, but at the time, I saw it as a surprise, not a betrayal. I imagined Olivia smiling, clapping, maybe even hugging Brianna. I thought it could be a teaching moment about generosity and family unity. I didn't anticipate resistance because in my mind, there was nothing to resist. At the event, everything started off exactly as Olivia planned. There were speeches from colleagues, laughter, toasts about her work. I waited until a natural pause, then asked the host for the microphone. I made a short speech about family, about growth, and then I congratulated Brianna on her new job. I encouraged everyone to clap for her. I even gave her a small gift card I'd picked up as a congratulations. It wasn't long or dramatic, maybe 2 minutes total. The reaction, however, was strange. People clapped, but it wasn't enthusiastic. There were confused looks. The energy shifted in a way I can't fully explain, but you could feel it. Olivia smiled tightly, didn't say anything, and stepped away shortly after. She didn't make a scene. She didn't yell. She just went quiet. Later, she pulled me aside and told me she felt blindsided. She said the event was about her work and her career, not about Brianna. She said it felt like I'd hijacked something she spent months planning. I told her she was being dramatic and that she should be happy for her stepsister. I also said, maybe too bluntly, that Brianna needed encouragement more than she did and that Olivia didn't need constant validation to feel secure. That didn't go over well. After the event, things escalated quickly. Olivia left early. The next day, I started hearing that her friends and coworkers were messaging her, apologizing for how awkward the moment was. Some people apparently thought it was inappropriate. That honestly shocked me. I never intended to humiliate anyone. The idea that a simple congratulatory moment could be seen as humiliation felt ridiculous to me. When Olivia confronted me again, she used that word, humiliated. She said it wasn't just personal, it was professional, that her colleagues now associated her big achievement with an uncomfortable family moment. I told her that if her colleagues were that fragile, that wasn't my problem. I said she was acting jealous of Brianna, which I still think played a role whether she wants to admit it or not. Since then, Olivia has pulled away. She doesn't answer my texts the way she used to. She declined coming over for dinner. She didn't invite us to a smaller follow-up gathering she had with close friends. It feels like I'm being punished for trying to be inclusive, and that's the part I can't wrap my head around. I understand, intellectually, that maybe I should have asked first, but the level of outrage doesn't feel proportional to what actually happened. I didn't insult Olivia. I didn't minimize her achievement in my speech. I simply chose to recognize another child in the room who deserved encouragement too. The way people are framing this as some malicious act feels unfair and frankly hurtful. So that's why I'm here, because I need to know if I'm truly missing something, or if everyone else is just being overly sensitive. Is it really wrong to celebrate one child's small win at another child's big event? Or have we reached a point where inclusion is somehow seen as sabotage? Update 1. I wasn't expecting the reaction to keep spreading after I posted, but it did. Within a couple of days of the celebration, photos from the event started circulating on social media. Olivia's coworkers posted pictures congratulating her, tagging the company, tagging mentors, all the usual professional stuff. Mixed in with those were comments referencing that awkward family moment, or joking about how every work event needs a surprise plot twist. At first, I told myself people were exaggerating for humor, but then I realized something important. These weren't just friends. These were her colleagues, people she works with every day, people whose opinions actually matter in her career. That's when it hit me that this hadn't stayed contained within the family. The moment I thought was harmless had bled into her professional world, and not in a flattering way. I still didn't agree that it was some unforgivable offense, but I could no longer pretend it was private. Extended family started calling, not gentle check-ins, but blunt conversations. My sister told me outright that I had embarrassed Olivia. My aunt said she'd noticed for years how I minimized Olivia's achievements while bending over backward for Brianna. That one stung because it wasn't just about the party anymore. It was about a pattern they were all apparently seeing that I had either ignored or justified away. I felt ganged up on. Every conversation felt like an interrogation, like people were suddenly rewriting my entire parenting history based on one moment. I pushed back hard. I reminded them that Olivia was grown, successful, and more than capable of handling herself. I pointed out that Brianna was still a teenager who needed confidence and encouragement. I kept saying the same thing. Different kids need different things. But the more I said it, the less convincing it sounded, even to me. Things got worse when Tom finally weighed in honestly. Up until then, he'd mostly stayed neutral, which I took as quiet agreement. But one night, after yet another tense call with a relative, he told me I should have asked Olivia before doing anything. He said the timing was wrong, that the setting was wrong, and that even if my intentions were good, the execution wasn't. Hearing that from him felt like a betrayal. This was his daughter I was trying to support, and instead of backing me up, he was telling me I'd messed up. Then Brianna spoke up, and that's when the ground really shifted under me. She came to me looking uncomfortable and admitted she hadn't wanted the attention at the party. She said she felt put on the spot and embarrassed, especially knowing the event wasn't about her. She told me she felt like I'd used her as a prop to make a point, rather than actually listening to what she wanted. That was not the reaction I expected at all. I had convinced myself I was doing this for her, and suddenly she was telling me she never asked for it. Meanwhile, Olivia went quiet. Not dramatically, not angrily, just distant. She stopped replying to my texts right away. When she did respond, it was short and neutral. No updates about work, no sharing plans, no casual conversation. I found out about things in her life through social media or other people. It felt like she was slowly removing me from her world, and that hurt more than I expected it to. With all this happening at once, I started replaying moments from the past that I hadn't thought much about before. Times I missed Olivia's events because Brianna was having a hard day. Times I downplayed Olivia's accomplishments with comments like, "That's great, but you've always been capable." times I stepped in loudly for Brianna while assuming Olivia didn't need the same energy because she was fine. At the time, those choices felt logical. Now, lined up together, they didn't look as balanced as I'd always told myself. I kept trying to fall back on my original reasoning, repeating it in my head like a mantra. Good intentions matter, parenting isn't equal. I was trying to build unity, but each time I did, it felt thinner. The words didn't land the way they used to. I started to see that even if my intentions weren't malicious, I had still made a decision about Olivia's moment without her consent, and that wasn't something I could undo by explaining myself. I'm not going to pretend this update ends with some clean emotional breakthrough. I'm still angry. I still feel misunderstood. Part of me resents how quickly everyone labeled me the villain without acknowledging what I thought I was doing. But I can also admit something now that I couldn't before. I thought I was being generous by sharing the spotlight. I didn't realize I was taking something that wasn't mine to give. Final update. It's been several months since the celebration, and the distance that opened up afterward never really closed. If anything, it settled into something more defined and permanent. At first I told myself it was temporary, that Olivia just needed time to cool off and eventually things would normalize. They didn't. Instead, I slowly realized I was no longer part of the milestones I used to assume I'd be included in, by default. I found out about things in Olivia's life through social media or mutual acquaintances, a new project launch, a speaking engagement, a short trip she took with friends. Things she would have once mentioned casually now felt like announcements I was reading as an outsider. There were no arguments, no dramatic cutoffs, just absence. That turned out to be harder to argue with than anger. What made it worse was that this wasn't happening in isolation. Extended family adjusted quickly to the new normal. Invitations came without my name attached. Conversations shifted when I entered the room. No one was cruel about it, but there was a quiet understanding that Olivia had drawn a line and people were respecting it. I kept wanting to explain myself, to reframe the situation one more time, but I could feel how unwelcome that would be. The moment had passed. Over time, I had to sit with something I hadn't fully admitted before. This wasn't just about one hijacked celebration. That moment worked because it fit into a story people already recognized. I had spent years convincing myself that treating my daughters fairly meant compensating where I felt it was needed most. Brianna struggled, so she got more attention. Olivia succeeded, so she got less. In my mind, that balance made sense. What I hadn't acknowledged was that I was using Olivia's success as proof she didn't need me, while using Brianna's vulnerability as a reason to center her constantly. Once I stopped arguing with that internally, things became clearer in ways I didn't like. I could see how often I had redirected praise away from Olivia with comments like, "You've always been capable," or "This was expected of you." I could see how often I framed her achievements as stable background noise while treating Brianna's smaller steps as events worthy of collective celebration. I didn't do it because I didn't love Olivia. I did it because I assumed her strength was permanent and self-sustaining. That assumption turned into neglect, without me ever calling it that. The part that took the longest to accept was the humiliation aspect. For weeks, I insisted people were exaggerating. Then I started thinking about who was in that room. Olivia's colleagues, mentors, people whose respect she had earned through years of work. They weren't there for a family dinner. They were there for a professional milestone she had planned, curated, and invited them into intentionally. When I redirected attention, even briefly, I changed the tone of the entire event. I turned something she controlled into something she had to endure politely. That wasn't just embarrassing. It undermined her in front of people whose opinions matter in ways I hadn't fully respected. Eventually, Olivia agreed to speak with me. It wasn't a reconciliation conversation. It was short, calm, and very deliberate. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't list grievances. She simply explained that the event wasn't about Brianna, and her anger wasn't about jealousy. It was about respect. She told me that when I made that announcement without asking, I showed her that her boundaries didn't matter if I believed my intentions were good enough. She said she wasn't interested in debating motives anymore. She was interested in protecting her space. She also made it clear what the future would look like. Contact would be limited. Information shared would be selective. Invitations would not be automatic. She wasn't doing this to punish me, she said. She was doing it to avoid being put in a position where she had to brace herself emotionally around her own milestones. That was the line, and it wasn't up for negotiation. I didn't apologize in that conversation the way people expect in tidy stories. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I acknowledged what she said and told her I understood why she felt the way she did. That was all she wanted from me in that moment. Not explanations, not defenses, just recognition that what happened wasn't hers to absorb quietly. Since then, I've stopped trying to justify myself to others. Not because I suddenly see myself as the villain in some dramatic sense, but because I finally understand that intent doesn't give me ownership over someone else's experience. I can believe I meant well and still accept that what I did caused real harm. Those things aren't mutually exclusive, even if I spent a long time treating them like they were. I still have a relationship with Brianna, and that relationship has changed too. She's more cautious now, more vocal about what she does and doesn't want highlighted. I've had to learn to ask instead of assuming. That hasn't been comfortable, but it's necessary. If there's one thing this entire situation stripped away, it's my ability to tell myself I know better simply because I'm the parent. I don't know what my relationship with Olivia will look like long term. It may remain distant. It may never return to what I expected it to be. I'm no longer operating under the illusion that I can fix that by saying the right thing or reframing the past. What I can do is stop repeating the behavior that led here. If there's one conclusion I can sit with honestly now, it's this. Celebrations aren't interchangeable, and support without consent becomes sabotage, no matter how generous it feels in your own head.